Hello and welcome to this Bioprocess International webinar. I'm your host, Leah Rosen, the online editor for Bioprocess International. Before we get started, just a couple of notes. This webinar is being recorded and will be made available for replay in the multimedia section of our website. We have muted the audio lines, but we welcome you to type in your questions for our speaker in the chat window on your screen. After the presentation, we will begin the question and answer portion because this is, after all, Ask the Expert, and I will ask our speaker your questions from the chat window. Your questions in the chat window will only be visible to myself and our speaker. Thank you again for joining us today. It is now my pleasure to introduce Gernot from PreSens.
Yes, hi to everybody. My name is Gernot. At PreSens, I'm Director Marketing and Innovation, and I'm also the product manager of our new shake flask reader, the SFR Vario. It measures pH, oxygen, biomass, and oxygen uptake rates online in shake flasks. My scientific background is analytical chemistry, and therefore I'm working with chemical optical sensors for more than 15 years, beginning at the university and then later continuing at PreSens. Yes, and today I hope to show you how online measurements can improve the process understanding. Let's start. First, I want to say a few words about PreSens. PreSens is based in the state of Bavaria in the south of Germany, and it was established in '97 as a spin-off of the local university. It's privately owned, and we are focusing on monitoring of essential parameters like measurement of oxygen, pH, CO2, or biomass. With our 90 employees, the company is certified ISO 9001 and 13485, which is the quality standard for medical products. I think you all know shake flasks very well because they are widely used for cultivation of microbials and cell culture, and I think most of you have worked with them. They are easy to use, they are a low-cost device, and they are often used for doing screening and media optimization. But then, in many cases, cultivations are followed, of course, by a cultivation in benchtop bioreactors. They have much more options, but also need more input. Our goal is to move the shake flask in the direction of giving you more knowledge about the process and improve the process understanding. How can we do this? First, let's have a look to the oxygen and pH sensor. You see the two sensor spots on the bottom here on that picture. One is the pH sensor, the other is the oxygen sensor. So these sensing layers, these sensing dots are integrated into the shake flask, and they are read out by a fluorescence. Their fluorescence is read out by our device. We measure the fluorescence, and with this measurement we can determine oxygen and pH online. Here you see pictures of the sensors during the measurement. Let's have a look to the biomass sensor. The biomass sensor is a measurement of scattering of light, and it is integrated into the optics. You can see it on this picture next to the optics of the oxygen and pH measurement. One important feature is that, as you can also see here, and it's better even shown here, during the movement of media in a shake flask, of course, this media is spinning around, and we have an uneven distribution of media, like shown on this picture. So most of the media is just at one edge of the shake flask. And therefore, it's important that the measurement is taken at the right time. And we have integrated an additional sensor that measures the shaker position and that initiates the measurement at the right time depending on the rotation frequency of the shaker. Let's have a look to the hardware. The complete system can be integrated in almost all incubators, like shown on that picture. And we have integrated a wireless data transmission and 2 rechargeable batteries to be completely free of any cable going in and out of in the incubator. Our optics shown here measures, as mentioned before, pH, oxygen, and the biomass. And the software is completely modular. It measures and shows up to 4 devices in parallel, but not only offers the visualization of the current measurement, but also a comparison of your current measurement with historical data. So you can see online deviations of the current cultivation from historical data. Yeah, before we come to all these questions, we have a look to some examples how this system is applied. A very interesting application of the sensor is monitoring of metabolic shifts. So first, let's have a look of what is shown on this graph here. So we have 3 online measured parameters: scattered light, dissolved oxygen, and pH, and 2 offline measured concentrations of glucose and lactose. You see here that the online measurement shows some gaps. This is caused by stopping the shake flask due to the offline measurement of glucose and lactase. So what we see here is first that offline measurements are always having an influence on vital parameters like oxygen, like mainly oxygen, because of course any disturbance of the system is changing the oxygen ingress and therefore also changing the actual oxygen concentration in the media. So offline measurement is disturbing the cultivation. Let's have a closer look to what's going on here. You see here that basically at this point glucose goes into limitation while oxygen concentration is increasing. And the pH stops to decrease. And also, looking at the scattered light at the same time, we see little like band which indicate the slowdown or even growth stop during the shift. Because what happens here is this change. You see that after this depletion of glucose, the system or the cultivation has to adapt to the metabolic change, and this is clearly indicated by our biomass sensor, also by the oxygen sensor. So even without having the glucose and lactose offline measurement, the metabolic shift is clearly shown with this example. Another interesting application of the sensor is the measurement of the shift in the yeast growth. We have here Cluromyces marxianus, a yeast that is commercially used to produce lactase enzyme, similar to the use of other fungi for this application. Let's again have a look at the monitoring that was applied. We see our online measurement of biomass, pH, and dissolved oxygen, as well as the offline measurement of glucose. Again, here we can clearly distinguish two different growth phases when cultured with glucose as a substrate in this shake flask. In the first phase, shown here, glucose is metabolized under aerobe conditions. and the oxygen content decreases continuously down to a very low level, below 5% air saturation. Due to the metabolic products, also the pH decreases from 7 to about 6. The biomass signal shows a very distinct change at this point, indicating that there is a metabolic shift, again, very easily shown without having the offline information. These were two examples of how the system can be applied and how we can determine metabolic changes very easily without having the possibility of offline measurement. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gernot. And we do have a couple of audience questions. Which flasks can be used with this device?
So the device is prepared for flask sizes from 125 ml up to 2 liters.
Okay.
And
what?
Maybe I should also mention that we can use either baffled or non-baffled flasks. Both is possible with the system.
And what is the recommended minimum volume in the shake flask for accurate dissolved oxygen reading?
Mm-hmm. I think in one of the previous slides I showed that we have integrated this sensor, which is measuring the rotation speed and also the media, the rotation speed and also the position of the shaker. So therefore we can work with very low volume. So we can work with the typical volumes, but actually the volume is depending on the viscosity of the media and also on the type of cultivation.
Speaking of that, one audience member asked that a problem that they were facing while doing a shake flask is that the cells stick to the upper layer of the media on the flask wall, and they wonder how you could prevent that. Do you have any recommendations?
What is the problem actually? Could you repeat, please?
Cells adhering to the upper media on the flask wall.
Okay, I think maybe the question is not solely related to this system, but I think this is a question of the surface characteristics of the flask. So I think I would probably try to change the flask material, maybe changing from plastic to glass or vice versa if this is an issue. Okay.
Do you have any sample or examples of using mammalian culture?
Yeah, that's a good question. So mammalian culture has typically a lower signal for scattered light. So the scattered light signal does not recognize very low cell concentration. So here I don't have an example for that, but we have done some cultivations with CHO cells, and there we see that we can measure high cell concentrations, but probably not the starting phase.
Okay. Does the system work with photosynthetic organisms?
We don't the measurement principle or our system, because we are not using just one light phase. We're using modulated light. Can also work under different light conditions, but it's more the questions of how dense the culture is. So we need a minimum density to have this scattered light signal.
Okay, and it says, we have a question, do you have any products in the pipeline to read viable cell volume using capacitance-based sensors that would work better for fermentation medium with solids?
So we are focusing on optical measurements only, not on capacitance or other systems.
And is it possible to use colored glass?
Good question. I think this really depends on the color. So if we are talking about a color brownish like maybe typical beer bottle, will be difficult because then we are losing too much light. If we are talking about maybe more like yellowish flask, then it's possible it just needs adjustment of the calibration settings. Mm-hmm.
Okay, and one more question about the calibration. If are these sensors single-use or multi-use? And if they're multi-use, do the sensors need calibration?
Actually, we have both. We have our multi-use glass flask with integrated oxygen sensors. They are calibrated by, or they need to be calibrated by the user. And we also have calibration-free disposable sensors with integrated oxygen and pH measurement. The biomass measurement is possible in both systems, in glass or plastic systems.
Okay, I think that's about all the questions. If there's any questions I didn't ask, Gernot will get back to you, or you can email him, follow up directly.
Yeah, maybe I can just show the slide here. Of course, you're also welcome to send a question to my email address. Mm-hmm.
That's perfect. Thank you, Gernot, and thank you, everyone, for joining us.
Leah, thank you for the great introduction and for helping me with all of that. Thank you.
Thank you.